Hey guys, welcome back to the First Methodist Shreveport podcast. I'm here with Lee Jeter, Executive Director of the Fuller Center for Housing today. Lee, how are you?
Thank you. I am well, and thank you. I'm honored to be at First Methodist Shreveport today and honored to be a part of this podcast. So I'm excited about this opportunity and looking forward to a great conversation.
Man, me too. We had some great conversation before this, and so if you could just bless everybody with a little bit about you, how God brought you to where you're at now, as being the Executive Director for the Fuller Center for Housing.
Yeah. This has been a journey, and I tell everyone that I get a chance to share this information with that being a resident of Shreveport, Bossier, I was born in Bossier, went to high school in Bossier, and I have to kind of walk people into how I got into this ministry of the Fuller Center for Housing of Northwest Louisiana. I came from a family that had a single mother that raised 6 kids of her own, and then we had a aunt that passed away at an early age that had 2 kids. So my mother brought them into the family. So I was the oldest of 8.
Goodness.
And so when you got a single mother that's working multiple jobs trying to raise a family, you know, and you got to do whatever you can to help out. And so in that situation, I had this vision in high school. I went to Parkway High School, and I was going to go to law school and be a lawyer. And, growing up, you just have all kinds of dreams and desires of things that you want to do. And until life hits you, reality is financially, you just can't do some of the things in life you want to do. So when I found out that I wasn't able to pay for college and go to the college that I wanted to, I decided to go into the military. And the military became an option for me. But not only was it an option for me to help get my education, but I realized later it also was an opportunity for me to grow up. To be able to travel and see other cultures and see how other people live, and really to learn more about life and learn more about myself. So I ended up going in for a 4-year hitch, and that 4-year hitch turned into a 21-year career.
Goodness.
And it just brought me full circle, because when I left here in 1977 to go to boot camp, I made the statement that I was never coming back to Shreveport and Bossier. I just thought we were a community that was behind the times. We still deal with a lot of racial issues, and I said, I'm not coming back. But as life happens, I ended up getting married, getting divorced, and had kids back here. So I came back here after I retired, and then I began to see how my footsteps had been orchestrated.
Yeah.
And we don't realize the impact that the Lord and our faith has on our life until we're able to look back on it. You really never see the journey that the Lord has in store for you at the beginning. But in hindsight, when you look back, you can see all of this was orchestrated by the Lord. And so when I came back, I began working for a nonprofit, running a youth program, owned my own business for a little while. And then, as happened, I met Millard Fuller in 2005.
Okay.
When they actually started building houses in the Allendale community, which is, right in the backyard of First Methodist Shreveport. And First Methodist was one of those initial partners that helped the Fuller Center with the initial first 10 houses that we began to build in Allendale. And at that particular time, I was running a youth program. So I was able to bring my youth out and engage my youth in that process. And that's how I ended up becoming familiar with the Fuller Center and Millard Fuller, and meeting him personal, Millard and Linder, and was very, very impressed by the ministry. So that's kind of how we got to the Fuller Center.
Wow, that is an incredible history for sure. First of all, thank you for your service. And you said you were in the Marines for
21 years.
21. What's the rank that you made it to?
I retired as a gunnery sergeant, or
Wow.
E7. Yeah.
Goodness, that's impressive. And so you went from being in the military, moved back here, and stayed here for your kids?
That's the only reason I came back here. I came back here because as a military man and growing up in a household without a father, growing up with a single mother, one of the things that was always important to me is at least being a part of my children's life, seeing
Yeah.
how they were raised. And it's hard to do that in the military, especially once you've gotten divorced and your family's living one place. And you can get the kids during the summer, you can get them at special holidays. But
Yeah.
if you're not there every day to see what's going on in their life, it's very, very difficult for you to influence their lives. And I really wanted to try to have a positive influence on my children's life, and that's why I came back here. And one of the stories I like to tell individuals, and I love all my children equally, but I have a daughter that also went into the military.
Oh, yeah?
And everybody think I play favorites, and it's not that I play favorites, but when I retired and came back here, my daughter came over one weekend and said, "I'm coming to visit, Dad." I was still single, living in an apartment at that time, and she came and she never left. So her weekend visit, and she was in high school, ended up being a lifelong stay until she was able to get grown and move out on her own.
Yeah.
But having that experience, drove her into the military, and she's got over 20 years in now.
Good,
And she's kind of like, Dad, everybody's got their own life, but there's some of your children that gravitate more to you than they do to other parents. And she was just one that gravitated to me more than the others. But I'm in a community and an environment where I get to see them and talk to them on a daily basis. And I think that's important.
That's
to be able to
incredible.
keep your family together. And even though they're adults, to help them with this life journey that we have to travel every day.
Oh man, I'm sure it was a blessing to you to have her for that long after. I don't know how long y'all were separated, but to have her come back and to then live with you, I'm sure that was a major blessing for you.
It was, and when you got a young lady that's living in your house, because she was my oldest daughter, it really dictates your lifestyle and the things that you can do, and it was because of her, and then the fact that the other kids wanted to come over and visit. That's what made me really buy my first home, because in the military I never owned a home. We traveled from base to base. You stayed on base. You rented apartments, but so my first home I bought because of my children and because of her living with me, and I knew we needed more space so that the other teenagers could come and be with us, and that would always be a family home.
Yeah.
And so I still have that home today, even though I bought a second home.
Yeah.
That home will always be our family home. And again, hindsight, it goes back into everything we do at the Fuller Center, because that's what we do. We're building homes for individuals that have never owned a home and hoping that they make that home a family home, something that could lead for that next generation. So again, you don't know all of this when you're walking into these journeys that the Lord directs you to. But once you are able to look back, you see, wow, okay, God, you really have a plan, and we don't know the plans that you have for us.
And that's so impactful, because my granddad did the same thing. He had 3 daughters, and so he did the same thing for his kids, where he was also in the military, and he didn't move around quite as much. He was more, we grew up in Texas, and that's where our family's home base was, and so had 3 different houses that he left to his girls, and so that really resonates and convicts me, because I've got a girl now and then one on the way in September. So it is, I don't know, I love that vision of having a family home and a place, just like a hub for where your family can, I guess, come back to and remember all those times y'all had together.
Yeah. One of the things that I share with our clients, our future homeowners, is that once you're on land and you're on a home, no matter what situation happens in life, your family always have a place they can go. There's always a place that they can call home.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to educate more people about that, and to help a lot of individuals walk through that process of what home ownership looks like, what succession looks like, because, we get there, but then we don't plan for the afterlife. We don't plan for death and things like that. And so if you don't plan for those things, they're going to happen.
Yeah.
But you have to plan for them. And, we talk a lot about wills and about successions, how not just to be a homeowner, but how to be able to leave your home to the next generation and make sure they have some responsibility to maintain it. Because that's one of the problems that I've observed in our city. We have a lot of vacant properties, a lot of adjudicated properties, a lot of vacant properties that no one wants to reclaim. But we've got to instill in this future generation the value of land and the value of home ownership.
I guess the reason that's most convicting, like you said, is you want to have a place that you can give to your kids, after you're gone. And so it's convicting because right now it seems like the mentality for most people, and I mean, honestly, myself, you're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about, how do I get the next big house? How can I use my current home to elevate my personal lifestyle, instead of looking at it, as you say, to guarantee that not only your family is going to have something, but they're going to be able to go to a place and have a home in the future. So it's powerful stuff.
And for me, that was a process of spiritual growth. I mean, I grew up in a Baptist church, and I've always had that faith. But a lot of things you don't understand until you walk into your spiritual growth, and once you have a spiritual growth, then you realize that material things, they're here temporarily, and it's part of our spiritual growth and spiritual journey as you prepare that next generation. For life, and that's part of what we have to do in the church, outside of the church, in our home, because at the basics, everything goes back to home.
Yes, absolutely. And so you said, and after you came back, had your family and owned a business here in Shreveport?
I own a business in Bossier. I'm a product of Bossier. My first home was in Shreveport, but my business was in Bossier. All of my roots are in Bossier. I live in Bossier now, even though I still have a home that I purchased in Shreveport that I have one of my children that's residing in. But my other home is in Bossier. But my business and the business I own, I actually, it's interesting because I'm a pastor now. Folks know, you owned a club? Yeah. I owned a nightclub. I had a chance to invest in a nightclub when I retired with my brother. But even that was a blessing because I learned things, and the Lord He shows you things throughout your journey. And I think I probably stayed in the nightclub business for about 5 years. But I got a chance to interact with people living in poverty, individuals living from paycheck to paycheck. It wasn't uncommon to see people get paid on a weekend and come to the bar in the club and just blow their whole paycheck over the one weekend, buying alcohol, buying liquors, and just living for that moment. And I just begin to see that, and I begin to think of, I understand I'm in business, but I'm seeing a lot of waste. I'm seeing a lot of people that are struggling every day, and their weekend, they're just throwing everything away on a weekend for a few hours of pleasure. And they're not thinking about tomorrow, what's going to happen tomorrow, or their future, or even their kids. And so after about 5 years, I was really, really convicted, and I told my brother, I said, listen, I love the business, but, I'll continue to support you, but I'm going to let you have the business and run the business. And it's not, I can't do it anymore. But it was also part of what the Lord wanted me to see, some things that He wanted me to see. And, getting up, early in the morning and going to bed 3 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday after night of running a club, and a Friday night and things like that. It really was taken away from my spiritual life. And I was just really conflicted, and I needed to move along. And then shortly after I got out of the business, I was still a deacon in church. I was still going to church as often as I could on my schedule. I wasn't living in the church, but I still had my faith. And it came to a point where the Lord said, okay, I've shown you some things through this particular journey in your life. Now you need to move on and do something different. And I did that. Actually, when the Fuller Center job opportunity came about, I turned that job down 3 times. I was asked by Glenn Barton, who was the vice president of operations that was directing the Fuller Center Shreveport project. and I've asked about him on a couple occasions about someone locally running this organization, someone that had ties to the community, someone that had a heart for the community.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not me. I said, it's not me.
Mm.
I said, number one, I don't know anything about construction. Don't want to do construction. That's, some people got certain skill sets that they love to do. That wasn't my skill set. But I had a good friend that I worked with, and she said, Lee, you've got some talents and skills, and you just got to pray and let God direct you. Your talent and skill has been wasted here. You're never going to grow in this organization. It was another nonprofit I was working with. Walk out there in faith and don't worry about it. Just let God guide you. And I did. I went on and put my resume in and went to an interview on a Wednesday. And I remember that clearly because the interview was like at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. We had midweek Bible study at 6:30.
Yeah.
And so I left the interview, went to Bible study, and then I felt convicted to stand up in the middle of Bible study, and I said, well, I just need to let y'all know that I'm going to be transitions. I'm going to be taking a new job. I hadn't even been offered the job yet. But I said, I'm going to be taking a new job, and so I just need your prayers because I don't know anything about construction, but, I'm going to be getting this new job and building houses for a load of moderate income people and working with the working poor. And I said, I just need the prayers of the church. And, I got the job. And shortly after that, the Lord convicted me and said, okay, I need you to not just live my gospel. I need you to teach and preach my gospel.
Wow.
And then that led me to my call for ministry. And so it's just been one step after another.
That's incredible. So you just claimed it, and then it happened.
Well, you speak things, but that's because the Lord talks with us. The Lord directs us, and if we listen to the voice of the Lord, if we listen to the Holy Spirit and just act upon what we know to be true from the Holy Spirit, then usually we're going to be walking in the right direction.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so when did your faith journey start? Like, when did you begin to have a relationship with the Lord?
Like most of us that grow up in the church, I got baptized in a small creek in the country outside of Red River down in a little place called Taylortown. So I'm a little country boy from South Louisiana, not South Louisiana, but South Bossier Parish. And we got drugged to church, And I tell everybody all the time, there was times that we didn't want to go to church, but Mom made us go to church because that's one of the things that we always had was church was always an intricate part of our life.
Yeah.
And so, you go there, you get baptized, you know who the Lord is, but you don't always walk into that journey. And especially when you go into a different environment like I did in the military as a young man trying to find myself and who I am. Even though I went to church on weekends, visited church, I was not in the church. I knew who the Lord was, but I wasn't working for the Lord. I mean, it was like, okay, I'm going to go and do this ritualistic thing on Sunday because I have to and go to church because that's the ritual. You're going to go to church on Sunday, but then I'm going to go back out in the world and do what I'm supposed to do Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And then at some point in your life, the Lord begins to show you things and you grow. You begin to get a spiritual maturity, as I like to call it, where you be more convicted to do everything in your life for the Lord. You begin to live for Him, not only on Sunday, but every day of the week. Your work, everything that you do begins to be revolved around your relationship with God. And then you find there's a peace that you get from having that relationship with God, and your decision-making process changes. And that's kind of what happened with me. I wasn't making random decisions or rash decisions. Every decision I made was a decision that was based upon my faith and my relationship with God, not on what's happening in the world, not on what's on my friends doing and society's doing, but based on my relationship with Christ. And when that happened, I can't tell you exactly what that happened, but I know it was a process. And that's one of the things that we try to do today and through the church is get the people to understand your journey is a process.
Yeah. And so, that's an amazing testimony, and I can definitely relate to it because, growing up, like you said, as a kid in the church, your faith journey almost starts out of obligation to your parents and your parents dragging you to church. Right. And then eventually you start to listen a little bit more and you're paying attention and you're hearing the words of what's preached. you're maybe going to like Bible study here and there, and I'm sure we've all had that journey where we are doing what we need to or supposed to do on Sundays, and then doing what we want to do during the rest of the week, and that eventual integration of the Lord's call in our life and how we're called to live each and every day outside of church as well. I just love that the honesty and the reaffirming that my journey wasn't too different, because it was very similar.
Right.
And I'm sure other kids feel the same, other
Exactly.
people feel the same way.
It's just like that prodigal son. Once we come to our senses and we realize that we're much better off in our Father's house than we are out in the world. And that's basically what his journey was. I want everything now. Let me live in the world. Let me live in the moment. And you realize that's not getting you anywhere. You really got to come back to your Father who has everything. And when you come back to your Father's house, you realize that you're blessed beyond measure.
Oh, man, I love it. And so you apply for the job at Fuller Center for Housing, get the job. And so how do you feel when you are actually told that you got the job?
I was excited.
Yeah.
But I was also nervous because, like I said, I didn't have a construction background. And, nails and hammers was not my thing,
Yeah, which it certainly is now. I shook your hand before we started the podcast, and you definitely have the hands of a construction worker.
Oh, yeah. And
That is
they definitely
impressive.
wasn't like that 10 years ago. Trust me. They were very, very soft hand.
Oh, man.
But now they're rough. And I get reminded at home all the time about how rough they are.
It's impressive. I mean, I think it's definitely one of those badges of honor for, people who do the kind of work that you do, and I think it's impressive. I would love to be able to have those hands, but not right now. And if we could go, I guess, establish what the Fuller Center for Housing is, and I guess the role it plays in the community of Shreveport.
Well, our primary mission, and it has evolved over the years, is today our primary mission is to build homes for what we call the working poor.
Okay.
And that's the low to moderate income families in our community that, because of socioeconomic status, finances, credit, they will never be able to go to the bank and own a home. They will never be able to know the beauty of home ownership. And so we qualify those clients, and once they're qualified, then, we have some things that they've got to do, because everything about our ministry is a hand up. It's not a handout.
Yeah.
It's just like our faith journey. You realize that the Lord's not going to give us everything that we need. We've got to put some work in it. He calls us to do some work. He calls us to travel to places that we don't know where we're going until he puts us there.
Yeah.
And we try to instill that in all of our clients, that we're going to give you an opportunity to be a homeowner. But you got to put in some sweat equity. It's a partnership.
Yeah.
We raise the money up front. And then once we raise the necessary amount of funds to build our houses through partnerships with our churches, sort of like our relationship with First Methodist Shreveport, who has invested close to about $1 million in our ministry to build homes at this point.
Oh, wow.
And so we can't do it without our church partnerships. And so we're working on home 64 right now. We build 61. We've got 3 that's nearing completion right now, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But the 3 that's under construction right now, it's costing us about $110,000 per house to build each one of those houses.
Wow.
And so that's a $330,000 of construction costs. $300,000 of that came from First Methodist Shreveport.
Goodness.
So we're in that budget, and the church has been budgeting money each year to help us build a home, and that's been a great help to our ministry, because our goal is to build 2 to 4 homes a year, and we just wish that more of our faith-based community, more of our churches in our area, which we have an abundance of, really had the heart of local mission.
Yeah.
Like First Methodist Shreveport does. And I understand the foreign mission. I understand what's going on in Haiti and Russia and other places that the church has ministry at and mission projects at. But what I like about First Methodist Shreveport is they've never ignored the people that are on backyards. It's like being on that Jericho Road. You see somebody wounded and hurt. They didn't just go to the other side. They didn't just step over them and ignore them like they wasn't there.
Yeah.
They really reached out to help them. And that's why we started in Allendale. It was a perfect partnership. We've got over 48 homes in the Allendale community. You know, we've got homes in Bossier. We've got homes in Stoner Hill. We've got homes in Cedar Grove. But it's because of our partnership with our local churches. And this is a prime example because we don't take any government funds. We don't get any government funds for the construction of our homes, and we don't charge interest to the poor. Now, that may not be a great business model for everybody else, but for the Lord, and when you're doing the Lord's work, it is a great business model because you're trying to get people hand up and not a handout. And you're hoping that during this process, they learn something about themselves, they learn something about their faith, and that they're going to pay it forward to help others.
Yeah.
And that hasn't always been the case because when we initially started our ministry, we not only started building homes, but we felt compelled to not just build new homes, but in the communities that we were building new homes, we had established a program that we call a Greater Blessing Programs.
Yeah.
And that Greater Blessing Program was that we would find other homes in the neighborhood that were homeowners occupied, that may be the elderly or someone that's on a limited income with a disability or something that was living in it, but it was their home and proof of ownership. And we would help those homeowners improve their home, their living condition. So that way we were bringing the entire community together, not only doing new homes for new applicants, but helping those existing applicants in the community homeowners build up their home so that the two entities was coming together. And there wasn't any animosity between, I've been here 30 years and my house is falling apart and there's nobody to help me. And here's Joe Smith over here getting a brand new home. What about me? I'm living in this community. They're coming from the outside in.
Yeah.
And so we tried to bring communities together like that, but it was a Greater Blessing Program. What we asked those clients to do is that we help you. If we put in a new roof on your house, or we help with plumbing, utilities, if we spent $15,000 helping to improve your living condition, to make your quality of life better, pay it forward. We didn't ask you for anything. We didn't put a lien on your house, on your property. We would give you a box, what we call a Greater Blessing box, that would have some envelopes in it, just like tithe envelopes. And we would ask, out of faith, will you tithe back to this ministry so that we could pay it forward to continue to help others that are in a similar situation like that, like you. And we did that for about 100 homes. You know, and when we found out the process wasn't working, then we had to readjust because we were applying for grants to be able to do these Greater Blessing Programs, and our outcomes wasn't meeting what we say they would meet in the grant because we could not get the citizens to buy into paying it forward part. And so we had to discontinue that program. There's a still need for that program in the community. There are communities that we're building houses in, and there are people that are homeowners in those communities that need help. They need weatherization of their home because of utility costs. They need help with their plumbing because they've got leaks, and sometimes the utility bills are extremely high because of the lack of weatherization or the lack of plumbing repair, electrical repair. But no one's doing that. And we have the ability to do it, but we can't do it without their help. And that's part of their faith journey. You know, we've got to break this mindset of people living in poverty that somebody's going to give you something every time you want something. You got to be invested in your future. Much like we have to be invested in our faith and our relationship with our Savior. You got to be invested. You know, the relationship is there. But if you're not invested in it, there's no return on investment.
I love that. And especially the aspect of improving the homes that people are in, because, you know, you mentioned communities like Allendale and Cedar Grove, and I haven't experienced this personally, but I've heard that like you said, the utility costs for these homes can be so high, even though it might be only like a 900, 1,100 square foot home. They have utility costs like for electricity that are like a $1,200 bill just because they have an AC unit that is not energy efficient at all, and it's blowing into a home that, like you said, isn't weatherized, and so it's not insulated. It can't hold that heat, and so it's essentially just passing through the home.
Exactly. And so that's been the one struggle that I've had throughout the ministry, and I took over as the executive director in 2009, is how do we get those citizens to buy into the program? It's needed. You know, the government can't do it. Government definitely can't do it as effective as we can do it. But I can't, in good faith, sit down and write a grant for $25,000 or $30,000 or $50,000 to go out and do 5 homes that we're going to weatherize to help reduce their energy costs and help give them a better quality of life, if I can't guarantee that the citizens are going to pay it forward to help someone else.
Yeah.
Because when we're using private dollars or grant dollars, you've got to have outcomes. You have to put some measures out there and some goals that you want to achieve. You know, and the past has proven that we can't get that buy-in.
Yeah.
But yet and still we know that people need it. And so that's been a struggle,
Yeah.
a major struggle for me. And one of my other major struggles has been the lack of support from some other churches, some other faiths. I talk about First Methodist and the support we've given from you, but if you just look around our city and see the number of churches that we have in our community, you know, our goal is to build 2 to 4 homes a year. We're almost finishing 3 now because of First Methodist.
Yeah.
But if we had to support from every church in our community, and we know what we're doing, we can do better than any government agency. Could you imagine how many houses we could build a year? You know, if we had legislation that would help our parishes and our city be able to get rid of vacant and adjudicated properties much easier, get them off the tax rolls, where we could issue a clear title on those properties and they could donate those properties to organizations like ours so that we could build homes and increase the tax base in those communities. You know, people look at this ministry and I think they look at it only from one level and really don't understand how this ministry can be beneficial to the entire community, the entire city, how it can elevate everybody. And I just believe when home ownership goes up, and certain communities and individuals are invested in those communities because they're invested in their houses, they're not moving a year, 18 months from now because they're not renters.
Yeah.
The dynamics, the crime of those communities go down. And that's what we saw in the Allendale community. When we begin to build new homes in Allendale and we begin to see property values increase, there was a corresponding decrease in crime. We think those things go hand in hand because you've got individuals that are invested in the community.
Yeah.
And that's a bigger picture than I think the average individual or even our average donor understands and sees.
I love that aspect of the home ownership and the responsibility to your home and also to your community and the corresponding relationship to crime and housing, because I've heard it said before that it's not so much that crime is a relationship of circumstances or like nothing to do, but more you don't go out and commit a crime because you have a responsibility to your family and your community. If you know that if you go out and commit a crime, you are potentially going to be taken away from your community and your responsibilities for 10 plus years. Whereas if someone doesn't have those responsibilities and they don't have the community behind them, they have essentially nothing to lose. And so they don't see crime as a deterrent for responsibility. They see it as just what do I have to lose?
Exactly. And there are a lot of people that's just living for the day, but when you give them a reason to live for the future, to live for tomorrow, you give them something to invest in, then their perspective for life changes.
Yeah. If you give them a home where you could say you can potentially own this home that could be a multiple $100,000 asset, if you do these things and you don't engage in these actions, then it provides a much bigger incentive than just you could go to prison if you do this thing. And so I love it. And you mentioned at the beginning that people go through an approval process so how does the approval process and how does the process work for someone who gets a home from the Fuller Center?
Everything starts with an application. So obviously, individuals, they come in, they get an application, they get all of the supporting documents, the proof of income, the birth certificates, Social Security cards of everybody that's going to be living in that house. There's some paperwork we require. And then once we get all of the information in, That applicant comes in with all the supporting documentation that we require in our application process. They sit down with us, and then we explain to them how this partnership works, because we don't have any legal binding contracts. So it's a partnership. And then from that, we pull the criminal background history of the individual. We pull a credit score from one of the from all three credit agencies. But we have an independent organization, another nonprofit that we partner with. They pull all that information for us. And then we sit down and we look at that as a staff, and we look at the whole person. Then we turn it over to our boards of directors, and they're a committee that we have on our board that's called a family selection committee. They will look at it. They will schedule an interview in an apartment with that client, and they go out and meet that client in their current living condition, where they're at. Look at the surrounding area, how they're living, the type of home they're living in, and they will evaluate them based upon their need for our program. And they come back, they make a recommendation to the board. If they feel like this client is a good applicant for the program, they'll recommend we move forward with this client in a partnership. And that's where the relationship began. If they feel there are some things that the client is not sincere in their desire, or they discern that really this client is not going to be a very good client, looking at their current living condition and how they're living, they're not even investing in their own home right now, even though it may be rental property. Just because you're living in something that belongs to somebody else doesn't mean you don't keep it neat, you don't keep it clean. You're not, living the very best that you can. They're tasked with making that decision. But once they enter into the partnership agreement with us, then they have to attend a first-time home buyers class, because if you never own a home, you got to understand there's a process.
Yeah.
They have to go to credit and budget counseling, and you may go to credit and budget counseling classes 4 or 5 times, because every time we can have a class, we want you at that class, because we're trying to change some habits. We're trying to enforce some new disciplines that you've got to save money. You got to be ready for that rainy day. And during that whole process, you've got to begin to save 1/3 of whatever the closing cost that is going to be when we go to closing, once we build your new home, if we get that far. Because there have been individuals that have been approved, but did not understand the partnership part of the agreement, the sweat equity requirement, that you want to stay active. We want you to volunteer with us 10 hours a month. We need to know who you are.
Yeah.
If I'm going to make a $100,000 investment in you, and I'm not asking for any interest or anything other than return, but having a positive relationship with you, I need to get to know who you are.
Yeah.
I owe that to our donors. I owe that to all of our partners, to make sure we're putting the right client in a home. And everybody wants to own a home, they say, but everybody's not willing to put in the effort and the work. So we do our very best to make sure we're putting the right client into a home, because we owe that to all of our partners and our supporters.
I love that, making sure that they go to the class of budgeting and home ownership every time it's offered, because that's so true that someone isn't going to go to that class once, or very rarely is anyone going to go to that class once and just get it.
Exactly.
And I mean, I remember that whenever my wife and I were first married at like 23, going through the Dave Ramsey courses.
Yes,
we went through it.
Yeah, financial management. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's great, and it's great information, and we needed it, but we had to keep going to those classes. Or it was not a one and done kind of thing where we took the course and then we were suddenly set for life. And so we had to keep following up on that information, revisiting that information, because, you get you usually just leave with 1 or 2 nuggets instead of like the whole concept. And so I love that you have to keep going back to it to keep getting, maybe the thing you missed the first time, or reinforcing this thing that you might have, stopped doing, that is going to eventually help. And so I think that's an incredible process that y'all do.
And we're constantly reinforcing that. We're constantly talking about impulse spending, and we just had one this Saturday, ironically.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're trying to constantly plan. You know, if you're going to go on a vacation and you're going to spend X amount of dollars, you're going to plan for that. You're not going to go on a vacation and just spend wildly, and then you come back and you don't have enough money to pay your bills and other things. You plan for those things. The same thing with home ownership.
Yeah.
It's not if something's going to break or fail in the home, or, you know, it's when.
Yeah.
And you've got to have the money to be able to repair those things. We believe in that broken window theory. If your window get broken, fix it. Because if you let the little things go, those little things eventually becomes big things. And that's what we have right now in our community with a lot of our senior citizens. They don't have home insurance because they had to make a decision. Do I buy my medicine or do I pay homeowners insurance? And now my roof is leaking and I can't get it fixed because I did away with my homeowners insurance. But now my entire structure of my home is falling apart because I wasn't able to get the roof fixed.
Yeah.
It's those little things that if you don't fix them, you know, they're going to come and be bigger and bigger things. And we're trying to constantly reinforce that, you know, and you can't ever get enough of that training. So we have our different partners, not only our faith-based partners, but our financial institutions, the various banks that partner with us. We have the professionals come in and facilitate those classes. And they facilitate them at our campus on Linwood. And we're blessed to be able to own a building that we have a surplus store. So 100% of all of our donor dollars and money from our faith-based organization, 100% goes toward the construction of our homes.
Wow.
You know, not any of the nearly $1 million that we've gotten from First Methodist Shreveport has gone for administrative costs. 100% of it goes toward construction of new homes.
Wow.
And then we have a surplus store that we get surplus building supplies, windows, doors, light fixtures, businesses that have a overstock of inventory that are home improvement inventory that they donate to us, and we sell those things to the general public, and that money goes back into the ministry to help take care of administrative costs, but also to help build other homes. If someone gives us an allotment of 32 by 80-inch interior doors, and they're brand new, that's coming from one of our local vendors or something, and we can use those in the construction of new homes, then we're going to use them in the construction of new homes.
Yeah.
But if somebody's doing a remodeling job and they're tearing out everything, all of the cabinets, doors, and light fixtures in their home, and they don't want them to go to the landfill, they donate those things to the Fuller Center. We sell them to the public, and that money goes back into the ministry to help us facilitate the building of homes, so that every grant dollar, every designated dollar that we get from our faith-based organization can go toward our primary mission. And then we're responsible for going out and making the money to take care of our administrative costs.
Yeah.
I feel that's our responsibility as a staff and as a board to make sure we're making that administrative cost, because we want our donors supporting our primary mission, and that is to build homes for low to moderate income families.
Wow, that's incredible. And so the buying of the used stuff that the Fuller Center for Housing gets, is that open to the community, or is that?
It's open to everybody.
Okay.
You know, and we find a lot about our community by individuals that come through that store. We have a lot of homeowners that come to the store to buy materials. We have a lot of the elderly that are trying to maintain their property. We have a lot of landlords that come that are rent property that they're not just trying to be the term a lot of people use slumlords, but they're actually trying to fix up their property to make it decent for individuals to be able to rent. And they'll come and buy materials from our store to invest in their rental property. And so it's another way of giving back to the community, but it's also saving valuable land spaces. We've got so many contractors and remodeling companies around here that are tearing stuff out that is filling up our landfills. You know, when some of that stuff is useful, and we like to say, what's one man's garbage is another man's treasure.
Yeah.
And you're giving something that can help another family, you know, and you're also helping our nonprofit in the process.
Yeah. And so if someone's listening to this who is like a contractor or someone who's remodeling their home and they have that stuff that is potentially going to go to a landfill, how can they get it to you?
They can call us and they can bring it by our office and let us know when they're coming, so we make sure we've got someone there to help them unload it. If it's something that they cannot deliver to our organization, then they have to get on a schedule, and we'll see if we can pick it up. We prefer if they can try to bring it to us, because we're lean, mean fighting machine. We've got 3 people on staff.
Wow.
Myself as the executive director, my administrative assistant, who's also my volunteer coordinator, and that works with all of our clients, our homeowners, making sure they're getting their sweat equity. And then we got the store manager that's got to manage the store from 9 to 4 when the hours of operation of the store is open to be able to sell to the general public.
Yeah.
So we need help in that area. And then we're always looking for volunteers, not just when we're building a home, but volunteers to help us at the surplus store, to help us conduct inventory at the surplus store, to help us load and unload stuff, to help go pick up stuff.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting a little old in this game, and if I'm the only one out there that's picking up, washing machines or dryers or refrigerator, and we take those type of things. We don't take furniture, because we partner with a group in Bossier called the Renesting Project that has helped us. And we're not trying to be other nonprofits. We're only dealing with material that we know. And that is home improvement items, windows, doors, light fixtures, insulation, shingles, materials like that can go toward the actual improvement of home. We're not trying to be a smorgasbord and sell everything for everybody. We know what our niche is, and that's where we're trying to stay, because we don't want to compete. And I don't believe in duplication of service. If somebody else is already doing it, like Renesting, and I use them as an example, and someone calls me with furniture, first thing I'm going to ask them, have you called the Renesting Project?
Yeah.
Because that's another nonprofit that's doing the same thing. Why would I replicate and try to duplicate what they've already been doing? We're not going to work in a silo. We're working in partnerships. Because when I have families that need furniture, I fill out an application for Renesting. Will you help our families? So that's a partnership. So we don't compete against our partners. We work together with them to make our community better.
Yeah, absolutely. And so who's the person that would usually or who usually applies for Fuller Center for houses, and who usually gets approved?
We have a lot of veterans that apply. We have a lot of elderly individuals that apply. We get a lot of applicants. When we dedicate these 3 homes that we're finishing on Martha Street in Stoner Hill, as soon as that goes out in the news and everybody sees the walkthrough in the camera and how beautiful these homes are going to look, and these new homeowners, we're going to get an influx of applications. Everybody's going to call because they see it on TV. It looks great. They hear what the mortgage is going to be, $600 a month for a new home. And now all of a sudden, everybody wants to be a homeowner. But everybody's not ready for it. Those individuals that really have worked through the process, understand the benefit of being a homeowner, that agreed to the partnership, and they're putting in the work. Those are the individuals that's going to get a home. I won't mention her name, but I was impressed on this Saturday at our financial management class where we were talking about budgeting and saving. We had a homeowner that showed up. She's an applicant. She's on the list. She hadn't got a home yet, and she's working through that process. I wasn't expected to see her Saturday. She showed up with a baby a week old.
Whoa.
She just had a baby a week ago. And I said, "You're coming to the class?" She said, "Yes, I don't want to lose my opportunity to get a home." You see this?
Oh, wow.
I'm doing this for this.
Yeah.
For this young man that I just had that's a week old. See, that impresses me because you're dedicated. You didn't use the excuse that I just had a baby. I've been out of the hospital a week. I can't come. You came to sit in a class that's going to help you because you're trying to build a better future for that young man that you just brought into this world.
I love it. And so you mentioned that there are only 3 people that are employed by the Florida, or at least in y'all's organization, there's only 3 people that are employed here in Shreveport, but y'all have built 60, how many?
We've got 61 that is occupied, and we've got 3 that hopefully we'll be finishing within the next 60 days, hopefully.
Yeah, so it's just or it's mostly volunteers who are helping build these homes?
Yes.
Okay.
We have paid trades that obviously, when we're building a new home because of the law and the builder's warranty, there's certain things we're not going to allow volunteers to do. Our foundation, our electrical, our
Yeah.
plumbing, heat ventilation, all of those things are going to be done by licensed subcontractors because obviously we're going to have that 1-year builder's warranty on those things. But when it comes to the framing, the painting, the installing of cabinets, the hardware, all of those things, and working side by side with the homeowner to do those things, then we're going to depend on volunteers to help with that. We're at the point right now where we just got through pouring the driveways and sidewalks of these homes 2 weeks ago. So we're hoping the weather. We're praying for some rain. We need to soften that soil up so we can finish some grading on that. And then we're going to be laying sod, and we're going to be installing flower beds around these homes. And those are the things that the homeowners with volunteers will do together.
Wow.
We've got a couple. They're all been painted on the inside. We've got a couple, 1 or 2 that need some exterior paint finish on the exterior. The homeowners and volunteers will do those things. So there are things we can always find for volunteers to do. And we need volunteers because the volunteers are the heart and soul of our organization.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can't do everything, and if we had to pay for everything that we're doing in the homes, it would be unaffordable for our homeowners. Because what we try to make sure is that whatever your income is, that your mortgage payments for us are not going to be more than 1/3 of your disposable income. And we're the bank.
Yeah.
You're paying it directly to us. We have a servicing company that handles all of our mortgages, but we're able to work with you. I have a homeowner right now that's out of work. She's probably not going to go back to work for another 30 days. She had an emergency appendicitis attack a couple weeks ago. She went in the hospital for some stomach pain and found out that she was going to have a 3-hour surgery because her appendix was almost ruptured. Well, obviously, she's a single parent. She's out of work probably going to be out of work for 3 months.
Yeah.
The luxury of our ministry, because we're the bank, we can say, okay, we're going to suspend your payments for 3 months. We're not going to let you go into foreclosure and risk losing your home because you're out of work. We're going to work with you because we built this home for you.
Yeah.
And if we need to put those 3 months that you're behind at the back end of your loan, we can do that. Because we carry the mortgage.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to work with individuals where they're at and in their need because life happens.
Yeah.
People have accidents. They have other critical issues that happen in their lives. Sometimes people get laid off. And you got that additional stress. Now I've got to find a job. But not only do I got to figure out a way to pay my mortgage, I still got to have lights, water, gas. And by the way, I got kids in school. We still got to eat. They got to go to school.
Yeah.
You're dealing with all of these life issues.
Yes.
And so we're not their church. But in this particular ministry, we're an extension of every church in our community because the people that we serve come from various faiths, various denominations, and we become an extension of those churches. And that's why I say one of my biggest disappointments is not having more support from more churches because we're doing things for your congregation, for your membership, especially those that are low income and working poor, as we call them. Yeah. That as a church, maybe you're not able to do. But you invest in a nonprofit like us because that's what we're doing. And in that aspect, we're an extension of every church that partners with us in the community.
Yeah. And I love that because we've talked to a few people, or one person specifically last week after the cameras were off. They mentioned that so many people have an amazing heart here in Shreveport and they want to give to the people in need. But 99.9% of the people in Shreveport have no idea how to actually meet the need of these people or how to give them what they actually need. And so instead of giving money directly to these people who might not, like you said, might not gone through the budgeting courses, might not know what they need to do as far as the future of their life, give that money to people like the Fuller Center for Housing, give it to like organizations that are like the you mentioned it, Renesting Project, and the things like that. The people who are to give that money to the people who are experienced in our community at knowing how to serve the people who you want to help personally, but you don't have we don't personally have the skills to do it.
Yeah. One of my staff members constantly asking me, why we don't do rental assistance and utility assistance? And I said, there are other organizations that are doing that. And she's one of my new employees, and she asked me that question because every day, without fail, people see the sign, the Fuller Center for Housing. Some people think we're part of the public housing, which we're not. Then other people want to know, can I get help with a utility bill or rental assistance or some of these things?
Yeah.
And we don't do those things, but we tell them there are organizations that do. But you've got to go through some training to get that assistance because, if I were doing that type of assistance for you, it can't be a one-time situation. What are we doing to make sure that you're not constantly needing rental assistance this month, next month, the month after that? We can't just fix a one-time situation. We have to change your life set so that this one-time emergency is not a consistent situation because sometimes your lifestyle needs to change. And sometimes we just have to have a heart-to-heart, come-to-Jesus meeting with individuals. You've got to make some choices. It may be simple that, okay, you smoke, and maybe you're spending $10 on a pack of cigarettes. I don't smoke, so I don't know what they cost.
I mean,
but
it's
maybe
astronomical.
maybe you're smoking, 6 or 7 packs a week.
Yeah.
Well, if you're smoking 6 or 7 packs a week at $10 a pack, that's $70.
Yeah.
Look at it over a month. What's your utility bill this month? I understand there are ways you got to help yourself, and there are sacrifices that you have to make if you want to change your living condition. And that's part of what we have to learn as individuals. And I keep thinking about my childhood and how we grew up. My mom made sacrifices. And as much as she wanted to give us things that other people had, we couldn't afford those things. I mean, Christmas was a day that I didn't look forward for anything under a tree. If we had a tree, most of the time we didn't on a Christmas day. That was just another day. We were just thankful to have food on the table. We grew up passing down. If I was the oldest and I wore out a pair of jeans, we're going to patch the knees on those jeans and pass them down to one of my other siblings. Now they just wearing with the hose out in the knees. But you learn to be thankful for what you had. And that's really carried over into my adult life. Even right now, I try not to get caught up in the things that the world do. I tell my grandchildren, everybody loves fireworks during New Year's and the 4th of July. And I just had to tell one of my grandsons recently, Papa, why you don't buy us any fireworks? Because Papa doesn't have money to burn. I'm not going to buy $100 worth of fireworks just for you to blow up. There are more important things in this life because of me. I don't have it like that. I'm not wealthy that I can just waste money. I have to be a very good steward of every dollar the Lord blessed me with in every aspect of my life. And I says, I don't have anything against those individuals that can afford it, but I'd rather put that $100 into a fund for you to go to college or something else that's going to help you. I just can't blow my money up like that. And that's the way I explain it to them. If I'm going to buy $100 worth of fireworks, I might as well take a $100 bill, set it on fire, and just let it burn because that's where my money's going.
Absolutely.
But I'm trying to teach him that at this age so that he can learn that you got to prioritize and you got to make choices. And if you're working every day and you're barely making it, there's certain things that may not be a priority in your life, and you can't do them because everybody else is doing them unless you just want to live like everybody else. If you want to live life differently, then you've got to begin to make some different decisions and do some things differently.
Amen. I love it. Oh, one thing we struggle with. Never mind, I'm not going to say it. Desserts are definitely a thing in our house. And so, like you said, it's not, you do get a little bit of a return for that money you spend on desserts, but like you said, it's not that money that you're spending consistently. Thankfully, it's not a pack of cigarettes every day, but that money that you're spending consistently on things that you don't need. We don't need to have desserts all the time, but it is
And I'm not getting against enjoying
Yeah,
life
yeah,
and have a good time, but
yeah.
again, look at the priorities
Mm-hmm.
and know what you can afford, but realize that if I'm budgeting every week for something that's not a necessity in my life, well, when an emergency happens, when a tire blows out, and I need a new tire, or something happens with the vehicle. I'm driving down a road in Shreveport, and I hit a pothole, and all of a sudden, even though the tire might be brand new, I just busted it, and now I need
Yeah.
not only new tire, but I need a front end alignment.
Oh.
Those things happen every day.
Mm-hmm.
You don't expect them to happen, but that's why we call it planning.
Yes.
So that when they do happen, it's not causing you a hardship, because now you got to make a decision. Okay, now I can't pay a bill because I've got to have this tire. I've got to get to work. I got to get to school
Yeah.
to pick up the kids. I got to have this, so something else is going to go without.
Yeah.
But I just wasted, $200-300 last month on having a good time at the fireworks festival, whatever. Was it that important? Everybody's got to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah.
My job is just to put the information out there to let you know that if you want to change your life and you want to change the circumstances in your life, everything starts with the decisions that you make, just like it did with the prodigal son. He squandered everything that his father gave him, and then he realized he didn't have anything, and he was eating with the hogs and slop. He realized how much better he had it when he returned to his father's house. But you have to plan for that.
Yeah, that's true. And so, speaking of planning, the people who get these homes from the Florida Center for Housing, are they able to sell these homes in the future, or do y'all carry the message of like that home ownership being like a family thing? Are they not allowed to sell the family, or are there like conditions on like life? Like, have y'all had people pay off the mortgages?
We've had people pay off the mortgage. Once you pay off the mortgage, it's just like any other home.
Okay.
Once it's yours, you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. Okay.
But what we have, while you can't sublet it, we're not going to build your house and you can't stay in it 5 years and rent it. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
And what we have, what we call graduated equity in the house, because we do go to closing with you, even though you owe the mortgage to us, we're acting as a bank, it is still your home. So we have what we call graduated equity. Each year, the homeowner has 10% equity in the house. So if you've been in your house for 10 years, then you have 100% equity in it. Wow. So when we set that as your house costs $100,000, keep the math simple for me, and you still, after 10 years, owe $30,000 on it, and you sell it, and you pay off that $30,000, and say you sold it for, 110, or whatever the case may be. Once you pay it off, everything's yours. But up until that point, after 5 years, life happens and you need to move, and you say, well, I'm going to put my house on the market to sell, then you can only get 50% of the equity.
Okay.
If you make $30,000 off your house, you're only going to get 15. The other 15 is going to go back to the Fuller Center. Each year you have 10% more equity in the home ownership, because we're trying to get you to stay in that home.
Yeah.
And we also have a blind second mortgage on every home that we build, so that once we go to closing and it hits the newspaper and everybody see all of a sudden you're a new homeowner and you've got a house that's valued at $140,000, that, oh, by the way, we're going to let you borrow $20,000 to get a new car, new furniture to go with that $140,000 home, and we're going to charge you 10 or 12% interest. That blind second mortgage that we have on the house prevents unscrupulous lenders from taking advantage of our homeowners. And so we're trying to do everything within our power to make sure we're protecting our homeowners, because we're not going to let you borrow money against the equity in your home and pay interest on something that we have built for you with no interest. So we have to protect some of our clients from themselves.
Absolutely. And so was that something that y'all experienced in the past? Like you built a home for someone and then a bank came along and said, hey, why don't you take out a second mortgage on the home? Or?
Well, Millard Fuller, who founded the organization, who also started Habitat for Humanities, when he came into the organization, when he started the Fuller Center after he left Habitat, he had certain foundational principles that he believed in.
Yeah.
One of them was not charging interest to the poor, that every individual Fuller Center partner did their ministry based on the needs of their community, and we followed those rules because they've been working. He had years and years of experience with this at Habitat, and one of the disagreements that he had with Habitat, which caused him to get fired from the board, is he adamantly did not believe in government funders. He believed in building a decent and affordable home, a home that individuals could afford, but he didn't believe in having HOAs or covenant that tells you, okay, in this neighborhood, your home has got to be 4-bedroom, 2-bath, it's got to be brick, it's got to have a 2-car garage.
Yeah.
The more things you got, the more things you can break down. Some of those things are unnecessary for someone that have never owned a home.
Yeah.
And so his philosophy was decent and affordable. Give them a decent place to live. Give them an affordable mortgage, and they're going to pay it.
Yeah.
And they're going to be better off for it.
I love it. And, I mean, that's, I feel like that summed up everything y'all do really well. And so we've talked about what First Methodist does as far as, you said has donated over $1 million to the Florida Center for Housing, and that means, you said 10 homes?
Actually, it's been a little bit more than 10, because when we started in 2005, we were actually building homes for $60,000 and $65,000.
Good.
Our house. We were using a lot of volunteers, and as the life has changed, and one of the biggest things that has happened with us recently is since COVID, we've lost a lot of our volunteer base and support. When we were building homes, we used to have volunteers from all across the United States come in, help us build. They would stay for a week at a time, work on a building. And the more volunteers that we have in the process, the lesson it is for the cost of the home.
Yeah.
Obviously, if we can build a home in 47 days, our cost is going to be a lot lower than if it takes us an entire year to build a home, because you've got all those other things, porta-johns, dumpsters, utility costs, all of those other things that you're running every month.
Yeah.
So the more volunteers we have engaged in the ministry, the quicker we can build a home. I won't mention a partner, but we built a home in Bossier from the day that we laid the foundation, and we started with the volunteers to set up the walls and raise the walls on the home. The home was finished in 47 days.
Wow.
So the actual construction cost of that home was a little bit over $67,000.
Goodness.
Because that particular faith-based ministry, that particular church, had a team leader, a house captain, and they had 10 to 12 volunteers out there every day working on different aspects of the house. And we worked with them around the schedule. So when the subs wasn't there, they were able to work on something else. Or if the subs was working on the inside, maybe they were working on the outside, doing the paint and everything on the outside. So we were working in partnership and around the activity of the subs. But we also find out by when we were building multiple homes at one time, whether it's 3 or 4 at a time, it doesn't matter where the subs are at on one house, there's work to be done on the other 3. And so we can continue to engage volunteers in that manner. And the more volunteers that we have engaging in the building process, the lesser the cost. And those savings are passed to the homeowner. Because as I stated earlier, the final mortgage and their final selling cost is actually based upon the construction cost.
Okay.
Not administrative costs.
Yeah.
It's based on the nails and lumber and what we put in the actual construction of the house. So if we're lower that construction cost, it's going to lower their mortgage payment. If we're able to build a house for $75,000 in this day and climate, their mortgage is going to be $75,000. We're not making a profit off them. If it costs us $100,000, their mortgage is $100,000. But if their mortgage is $100,000, obviously their cost to pay it off over a 20-year period is going to be more.
Yeah.
So volunteers are a very, very intricate part of our ministry. And the more volunteer support we have, the lower the housing cost is going to be. And we've just been trying to engage more volunteers since COVID. We've got to get back to having volunteers in our community be a part of this ministry because they're helping others.
And so when it comes to volunteers, who can who's the ideal volunteer, and what is the baseline for someone to be able to volunteer with y'all?
We've got different skill sets. Obviously, if you have a particular skill set, we're going to make you house captain, or we'll put you over a group. And you don't have to have any skills, because we're going to work with you side by side, and we're just going to tell you what needs to be done. And if we've got skilled volunteers that can be over that particular crew, we're going to let them turn you loose and do that work. But we also want to engage this next generation of leaders for our city. And so we don't want them too young. But if you've got teenagers in your household, or you got middle school students in your household that you're trying to help develop an ethic of service and teach them how to give back to the community, we want you to bring them.
Yeah.
As long as you are able to work with them and show them how to do it. Because we still want to put out a good product.
Yeah.
We want to put out the very best product we can for our client. But we also want our future generations to learn what it means to give back and be service to the community. So we want to develop a new generation of servant leadership.
I love that, because you don't want it to be just like a fun project. Like, this is going to be someone's home.
That's correct.
And you want to treat it with that respect that you would want to have for your home. You would want someone to put the diligence and the time into building your home that you are going to put into building someone else's.
And that's why our requirement is that anytime we have volunteers on site working on your home, you, as the homeowner, you're going to be there. And if you can't be there, that must be an exception to your schedule. That must be a reason why you can't get off work.
Yeah.
But we don't care about, oh, well, tomorrow's my birthday. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Volunteers working tomorrow? You're going to be working tomorrow. Again, it's sacrifice. You earn the right. You know, because when I bought my first home, I know what the interest rate is. And definitely when I bought the second one, the interest rate was much higher, even though my credit score was better.
Yeah.
You know, we're giving you that opportunity where your interest is not a problem. Your credit score is really not an issue because your mortgage is set based upon what it costs to build a home and over a 20-year period. So you don't have to worry about the interest and all of that. We want to see you make the commitment and the sacrifice.
Yeah.
Show us that you want it. Be invested in it.
Yeah.
And everything else is going to take care of itself.
And so what can people do for you now? I know that you mentioned volunteers is definitely something you need. And so also the involvement of faith organizations in Shreveport. So how can people get the word out about Florida Center for Housing, and how can you get in touch with more people in faith-based organization?
Well, actually, this is a great way I've been here on the podcast this morning, because we don't spend money on advertising. You're not going to see any billboards. That's at Fuller Center for Housing of Northwest Louisiana. You're not going to see any ads in magazines. You know, we depend on our board and our community partners to share about our ministry, what we're doing and how we're working to improve the community, how we're working to improve our city, one house, one community at a time. You know, we need our general contractors to share the word and pass the word. You know, I go around and I talk to various faith-based organizations, churches, contractors, businesses, to let them know about our ministry and get them to partner with us and give us a surplus merchandise that we can sell in our surplus store. We have to build those relationships. But when I'm out in the community trying to build these relationships, you know, when I go back to the office, I still got administrative requirements I've got to meet. I still got to make sure I'm doing payroll, I'm balancing the checkbook and financing, and making sure all of our other things are taken care of. And because, again, we've got a very small team. That's where our faith-based organization, our board of directors, our partners become a vital part of our ministry, because they're helping to spread the word.
Yeah.
The Fuller Center for Housing of Northwest Louisiana should not be the best kept secret for working families in our community. And we know that every faith-based organization, you know, every business has someone that works in that business that's working at or below the poverty level, that's got children that are struggling to make it month to month.
Yeah.
Share them the stories of our ministry. And then support our ministry. We don't want them just share the story and tell people there's an agency that you can go see and maybe you'll get qualified for a home that they may build for you. But be a supporter of our ministry in any way that you can, because everything that you donate to the Fuller Center is going back into the community.
I love it. Man, well, Lee, thank you for being here today. Hopefully, this gets you a bunch of new volunteers, new organizations working with y'all, and can't wait to see what God does with the Florida Center in the future.
Well, I'm excited about it. I thank you for the opportunity, and it's just the blessing of the Lord. The Lord puts people in our path for a reason, and we've been blessed because of that. And we've never had to spend $1 on advertising, but yet and still we're working on House 64.
Good.
Because we walk by faith and not by sight.
That's
And
right.
we just let the Holy Spirit guide us, and we're hoping through this podcast that the Holy Spirit will move some hearts of some other people that may be listening, and they'll at least begin the process of checking out our organization and seeing that we're a worthwhile organization to make a donation to contribute our time to contribute my talent and my time and my treasure to. And if you do that, then the Lord's going to give us the skills to bless it, to be a blessing to others.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Lee. And guys, we will see y'all next time.